Have you ever wondered why a tiny British sports car became the blueprint for electric supercars? Most people think the Lotus Elise was just another lightweight roadster trying to recapture the magic of old British sports cars. But if you thought this was just a stripped-down weekend toy for enthusiasts, you're wrong. The truth is, the Elise revolutionized automotive engineering in ways that still influence cars today. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 20 weird facts about the Lotus Elise that prove it was far more than just a pretty face with a small engine, including one fact about how this car's design philosophy literally saved a major automaker from bankruptcy. Bonded aluminum tub, not welded. The Lotus Elise didn't just break the mold, it completely rewrote how sports cars could be built. While every other manufacturer was still welding steel frames or riveting aluminum panels, Lotus engineers in Hethel were literally gluing their car together. This wasn't some backyard hot rod experiment either. The Elise pioneered the use of epoxy-bonded, extruded aluminum sections for production road cars, a technique borrowed from the aerospace industry. The bonding process uses a special adhesive that's actually stronger than traditional welding in many applications. Each joint is both glued and riveted, creating a redundant connection that distributes stress more evenly than welded joints. This construction method allows the aluminum to maintain its full strength since there's no heat-affected zone like you get with welding. The chassis goes through a giant oven to cure the adhesive, creating molecular bonds that are incredibly resistant to fatigue. What makes this really weird is that Lotus trusted this radical construction method for a car that would see track days, rough roads, and decades of use. Traditional automakers thought they were crazy. But the bonded aluminum chassis proved to be not only lighter and stiffer than welded alternatives, but also more consistent in production. Every chassis came out virtually identical, with none of the variations you get from human welders having good days and bad days. This technology was so revolutionary that when other manufacturers wanted to build ultra-lightweight sports cars, they came to Lotus. The bonding technique developed for the Elise became a cornerstone of Lotus's consulting business, helping fund further development of their own cars. Even today, some of the world's most exclusive supercars use bonding techniques that trace their roots back to that first Elise chassis. Featherweight backbone. Speaking of that chassis, here's where things get really impressive. The bare Elise chassis tips the scales at under 70 kilograms. That's 154 pounds for our American friends. To put that in perspective, a typical Harley-Davidson motorcycle weighs more than 3 Elise chassis combined. This isn't just lightweight, it's aerospace-level weight optimization applied to a road car. The secret lies in the extrusion process. Instead of stamping or forming aluminum sheets, Lotus uses extruded aluminum sections that are hollow with internal ribbing for strength. Think of it like drinking straws, incredibly light but surprisingly stiff when the load is applied correctly. The main backbone of the chassis is essentially a large aluminum beam that runs down the center of the car, with smaller extrusions branching off to support the suspension and body panels. Engineers spent countless hours optimizing every millimeter of material. They used computer modeling to identify where material was needed for strength and where it could be removed to save weight. The result is a chassis that looks almost organic, with material only where physics demands it. Some sections are so thin you can dent them with your thumb, yet the assembled chassis is rigid enough to support the car through violent cornering forces. This obsessive weight reduction extends to every bracket and mounting point. Even the bolts were chosen for their strength-to-weight ratio. The entire philosophy was that every gram saved from the chassis was a gram that could be used elsewhere for safety, comfort, or performance. It's this attention to detail that allowed the complete Elise to weigh less than most cars' engines. No power steering ever. In an era when even economy cars come with power steering as standard, the Lotus Elise stands alone. Not a single Elise ever left the factory with power steering, and this wasn't due to cost-cutting or oversight. This was a deliberate choice by engineers who believed that hydraulic or electric assistance would ruin the car's most important feature: pure, unfiltered steering feel. The Elise uses a simple rack and pinion steering system with a quick ratio that requires just 2 1/3 turns lock to lock. Without power assistance adding weight and complexity, drivers feel every texture change in the road surface. You can literally feel the difference between fresh asphalt and aged concrete through the steering wheel. Track day enthusiasts report being able to sense the exact moment their front tires begin to lose grip, allowing them to adjust their driving with surgical precision. But here's the weird part. Despite having no power assistance, the Elise isn't particularly hard to steer. The combination of ultra-lightweight, perfectly balanced chassis, and wide front tires means parking maneuvers require only slightly more effort than power-assisted cars. Once you're rolling above 5 miles per hour, the steering effort becomes perfectly weighted. Lotus engineers spent months fine-tuning the steering geometry to achieve this balance. The lack of power steering also means one less system to fail. There's no hydraulic pump to leak, no electric motor to burn out, no sensors to malfunction, just a direct mechanical connection between your hands and the front wheels. In a world of increasingly numb electric power steering systems, the Elise remains a beacon for enthusiasts who want to actually feel what their car is doing. Some owners who've moved on to more modern sports cars report missing the Elise's steering feel more than any other feature. Early MMC brakes. Here's a fact that even many Lotus enthusiasts don't know. The very first Elise models came equipped with metal matrix composite brake discs. This exotic material, typically reserved for Formula One cars and military aircraft, briefly made its way into the humble Elise before Lotus quickly backtracked to conventional iron discs. Metal matrix composite, or MMC, combines aluminum with silicon carbide particles to create a material that's lighter than iron but can withstand extreme temperatures. These discs weighed about 40% less than traditional iron rotors, contributing to the Elise's featherweight unsprung mass. In theory, they offered the perfect solution for a lightweight sports car, reduced weight, excellent heat dissipation, and long life. But theory and reality diverged quickly. Early Elise owners discovered that MMC discs had some peculiar characteristics. They required very specific brake pad compounds to work properly, and these pads were expensive and hard to source. The discs also had a narrow operating temperature window. When cold, they offered little bite, requiring owners to warm them up carefully, get them too hot on a track day, and they could crack or warp permanently. The real nail in the coffin was cost. Replacement MMC discs cost several times more than iron units, and with the specific pads required, a brake service could cost more than many owners paid for major engine work. By the end of the first production year, Lotus quietly switched to conventional iron discs. Today, finding an Elise with original MMC brakes is like finding a unicorn. Most owners long ago converted to iron, making these early cars with their exotic brakes highly collectible among Lotus historians. One-piece clamshell body ends. The Elise's body construction is unlike anything else on the road. Instead of multiple panels bolted together, the front and rear sections each consist of massive one-piece fiberglass clamshells. These aren't just body panels. They're structural components that contribute to the car's rigidity while keeping weight to an absolute minimum. The front clamshell includes everything from the front bumper to the windscreen base, incorporating the hood, fenders, and headlight surrounds in one giant piece. Similarly, the rear clamshell encompasses the engine cover, rear fenders, and trunk area. These massive panels are hand-laid fiberglass, created in molds so large that workers literally climb inside them during production. For service access, these clamshells lift off completely, exposing the entire mechanical package underneath. It's like peeling a banana to reveal the fruit inside. This design allows mechanics to access every component easily, from the suspension to the engine ancillaries. However, this convenience comes with a catch that many owners discover the hard way. If you damage a clamshell in an accident, you can't just replace a fender or hood like on a normal car. The entire front or rear section needs replacement, and these parts are eye-wateringly expensive. A minor parking lot bump that would cost a few $100s to fix on most cars can result in a $5,000 bill for a new clamshell. Paint matching is also critical since you're replacing such a large section of the car. Many insurance companies initially struggled to understand why minor damage resulted in such high repair estimates until they learned about the Elise's unique construction, named after Elisa. Every car has a story behind its name, but the Elise has one of the most personal. The car wasn't named after some mythological figure or alphanumeric corporate designation. It was named after Elisa Artioli, the granddaughter of Romano Artioli, who was Lotus's chairman during the car's development. Romano Artioli was the Italian entrepreneur who bought Lotus in 1993, saving it from bankruptcy. He had previously resurrected the Bugatti brand and had grand visions for Lotus. The Elise project was his baby, a return to Colin Chapman's philosophy of lightweight simplicity after years of increasingly heavy and complex Lotus models. Young Elisa was just a child when she attended the car's unveiling at the 1995 Frankfurt Motor Show. Photos from the event show her sitting in the driver's seat of the prototype, barely able to see over the steering wheel. The choice to name the car after her wasn't just nepotism. Artioli saw the Elise as representing a new generation for Lotus, just as his granddaughter represented the future of his family. What makes this story bittersweet is that Artioli's ownership of Lotus was short-lived. Financial difficulties forced him to sell the company to Proton in 1996, just as Elise production was beginning. But his legacy lived on through the car that bore his granddaughter's name. The Elise became Lotus's most successful model ever, keeping the company alive through multiple ownership changes and financial crises. In a way, young Elisa's namesake car fulfilled her grandfather's vision of securing Lotus's future, even if he wasn't there to see it through. Type 111. Inside within Lotus's engineering department, every project has an internal code, and the Elise was known as M111. And this wasn't random. Lotus has a long tradition of significant models incorporating variations of 11 in their designation. The original Lotus 11 from 1956 was a successful racing car, and the number became something of a good luck charm within the company. The M111 project code spawned an entire family of variants. The hardcore track version became the Type 111R, essentially an Elise stripped of any remaining comfort features and fitted with a more powerful engine. Later came the Type 111S, which added aerodynamic aids and track focus suspension. Each version pushed the lightweight philosophy even further, creating cars that were barely street legal. What's particularly interesting is how this internal designation leaked into the public consciousness. Owners began referring to their cars by the project codes, and Lotus eventually embraced it, officially marketing some variants with the 111 designation. It became a shorthand way to identify which generation and specification of Elise you were dealing with. The numbering system also helps trace the Elise's DNA through other Lotus models. The Exige, essentially a hardtop Elise with more aggressive styling, was internally designated M117. The Europa, built on a modified Elise platform, was M121. This numerical breadcrumb trail shows how the Elise platform became the foundation for Lotus's entire modern lineup, spawning variations that kept the company viable through the 2000s and 2010s. Rover 2, Toyota Heart Transplant. The Elise's engine story reads like a medical drama. The patient started life with a Rover K-Series heart, but midway through its life received a complete transplant from Toyota. This wasn't just an engine swap, it fundamentally changed the character and reliability of the car. The original Rover K-Series was a lightweight aluminum 4-cylinder that seemed perfect for the Elise. In 18-liter form, it produced 118 horsepower, later upgraded to 143 in VVC variable valve timing form. The engine was compact, relatively powerful, and critically, it was available. Rover was happy to supply engines to Lotus, and the partnership made sense on paper. But the K-Series had a fatal flaw: head gasket failure. The engine's design made it prone to overheating and head gasket problems, especially when driven hard on track days. Elise forums from the early 2000s are filled with horror stories of engines self-destructing, often at the worst possible moment. Some owners went through multiple engines, creating a cottage industry of specialists who could bulletproof the K-Series with upgraded gaskets and modified cooling systems. The Toyota transplant came in 2004 when Lotus switched to the 2ZZ GE engine from the Celica GTS. This twin-cam, variable valve timing engine was everything the Rover wasn't: reliable, powerful, and with a sky-high 8,500 RPM redline. The VVTLI system essentially gave drivers two engines in one, with a docile personality below 6,000 RPM and a screaming banshee above it. Suddenly, the Elise had Japanese reliability to match its British handling. The transformation was so successful that Toyota engines powered every subsequent Elise variant until production ended in 2021. US comeback via S2. For American enthusiasts, the Elise was forbidden fruit for nearly a decade. The original Series 1 car couldn't meet US federal safety standards, lacking airbags and failing various crash tests. Lotus fans could only watch from afar as Europeans enjoyed what many considered the purest sports car of its generation. The Series 2 Elise, launched in 2001, was designed from the start with US regulations in mind. Engineers added dual airbags, strengthened the chassis to meet side impact standards, and redesigned the fuel system for emissions compliance. Even the headlights had to be raised to meet minimum height requirements. All these changes added weight, the enemy of everything Lotus stood for, but it was the price of admission to the world's largest sports car market. When the Elise finally arrived in America for the 2005 model year, the response was electric. Despite a price tag approaching $50,000, dealers couldn't keep them in stock. Buyers who had waited years for a chance to own a new Lotus were willing to pay premiums above sticker price. The car magazines went crazy, with reviews praising the Elise's telepathic handling and raw driving experience. But America's love affair with the Elise was complicated. Many buyers discovered that living with such an uncompromising car was harder than they expected. The lack of power steering, minimal weather protection, and cramped interior sent many Elises back to the used market after just a few thousand miles. This created a unique situation where low-mileage used examples were readily available, making the Elise more accessible to enthusiasts who understood what they were getting into. The US market Elise also spawned unique variants like the supercharged Exige S, as Lotus learned that Americans would pay premium prices for extra power. Tesla's first car started here. Here's a fact that connects the humble Lotus Elise to the electric vehicle revolution. The very first Tesla production car was built on an Elise chassis. The Tesla Roadster, which debuted in 2008, wasn't just inspired by the Elise. It was literally assembled in the same Lotus factory in Hethel, England. Tesla's founders needed a lightweight platform for their electric sports car concept, and the Elise's bonded aluminum chassis was perfect. They contracted with Lotus to supply modified chassis and to assemble the complete cars. But this wasn't a simple rebadging exercise. Tesla engineers had to extensively modify the chassis to accommodate the massive battery pack, electric motor, and different weight distribution. The collaboration was more complex than either company initially expected. The Tesla Roadster ended up sharing only about 7% of its parts with the Elise, despite looking similar from the outside. The wheelbase was stretched, the door sills were lowered for easier entry, and the entire rear subframe was redesigned to hold the electric drivetrain. Lotus engineers learned valuable lessons about electric vehicle packaging that they'd later apply to their own projects. What's really weird is how this partnership saved both companies. Tesla needed Lotus's expertise to build their first car, while Lotus desperately needed the revenue from the contract manufacturing deal. The 2500 Roadsters built at Hethel between 2008 and 2012 provided crucial cash flow during the financial crisis. Meanwhile, Tesla used the Roadster to prove that electric cars could be exciting, paving the way for the Model S and their eventual domination of the EV market. It's strange to think that every Tesla on the road today can trace its DNA back to that lightweight British sports car. Opel Vauxhall Twin under the skin. The Elise platform was so good that even General Motors wanted a piece of the action. The result was one of the automotive industry's stranger partnerships, the Opel Speedster and Vauxhall VX220, essentially Elises wearing German and British GM badges. GM's European division approached Lotus in the late 90s with an interesting proposition. They wanted a small, lightweight sports car to inject some excitement into their lineup, but developing one from scratch would be prohibitively expensive. Lotus, always hungry for consulting contracts, offered to build them a car based on the Elise platform. The deal was particularly sweet for Lotus. GM would pay for production line expansion at Hethel, capacity that Lotus could later use for their own cars. The Speedster and VX220 were more than just rebadged Elises. While they shared the bonded aluminum chassis, the body panels were completely different, penned by GM's design team. The cars were also slightly larger and more practical than the Elise, with a properly sealed cabin and a larger trunk. Power came from GM's own Ecotec 4-cylinder engines, turbocharged in later versions to produce up to 200 horsepower. What makes this partnership weird is how it highlighted the different approaches to sports car marketing. Lotus sold the Elise to hardcore enthusiasts who valued lightweight above all else. GM marketed the Speedster and VX220 to buyers who wanted a unique-looking car, but with more everyday usability. The GM versions even had power windows, something Lotus would never dream of fitting to an Elise. Despite being built on the same production line by the same workers, the cars had completely different personalities. Production ended in 2005 when GM decided the low-volume sports car didn't fit their future strategy, but not before nearly 7,000 examples proved that the Elise platform could successfully wear different clothes. 340R was the wild sibling. If the standard Elise was too practical for you, Lotus had an answer: the 340R. This limited edition model took the Elise formula to its logical extreme, removing everything that wasn't absolutely necessary for forward motion. No roof, no doors, no windows, and definitely no compromise. The 340R was named after its target power-to-weight ratio of 340 horsepower per ton. To achieve this, Lotus started with an Elise and went on a deletion spree. The windscreen was replaced with a small aero screen. The doors gone, replaced by small cutouts in the bodywork. Side windows, you got tiny deflectors that did almost nothing. Weather protection consisted of whatever jacket you were wearing. The bodywork was completely unique, with a lower, more aggressive nose and huge rear venturi tunnels that looked like they belonged on a Le Mans racer. The suspension was track-tuned with adjustable dampers, and the brakes were upgraded to massive cross-drilled units. Even the seats were special one-piece carbon fiber shells that saved precious pounds while transmitting every road imperfection directly to your spine. Only 340 examples were built, making it instantly collectible. Buyers had to be dedicated enthusiasts because the 340R was barely street legal and completely impractical for anything beyond sunny day drives. But on a track or a twisty mountain road, it was sublime. The lack of a windscreen meant you experienced speed in a visceral way, with wind buffeting increasing dramatically above 60 miles per hour. Some owners fitted aftermarket windscreens for highway driving, missing the point entirely. Today, unmolested. 340Rs command huge premiums, especially the limited signature editions that came with special paint and interior treatments. Hot trunk quirk. Every Elise owner quickly discovers one of the car's quirkiest features. The rear trunk doubles as a food warmer. This isn't a feature Lotus advertised, but rather an inevitable consequence of packaging a storage compartment directly above the exhaust system. The Elise's mid-engine layout means the exhaust runs from the engine bay straight back under the car. The muffler sits directly beneath the rear trunk compartment, separated only by a thin aluminum heat shield and some carpet. After a spirited drive, the trunk floor can reach temperatures that would make a pizza delivery bag jealous. Owners joke about stopping for groceries on the way home from track days, knowing their frozen items will be thoroughly defrosted by arrival. This heating effect is most pronounced on supercharged models, where the engine works harder and generates more exhaust heat. Some owners have reported plastic items melting in the trunk after extended high-speed runs. The owner's manual warns against storing temperature-sensitive items, but doesn't fully convey just how toasty things can get back there. Experienced Elise drivers learn to pack accordingly, using insulated bags for anything that needs to stay cool. The flip side is that this quirk can actually be useful. More than one owner has discovered that the trunk is perfect for keeping takeout food warm on the drive home. Some even use it intentionally, timing their restaurant pickups to coincide with spirited drives. It's just another example of how the Elise's uncompromising design creates unexpected characteristics that owners either learn to love or find endlessly frustrating. There's even a cottage industry of aftermarket heat shields and insulation kits for owners who want to use their trunk for more conventional storage. Sill step gymnastics. Getting into an Elise isn't just opening a door and sitting down. It's a carefully choreographed dance that every owner must master and every passenger must be taught. The extremely wide door sills, necessary for chassis rigidity in a car with no roof structure, create an obstacle course between you and the driver's seat. The sills on an Elise are about a foot wide and sit at an awkward height that's too high to step over comfortably, but too low to sit on easily. The technique most owners develop involves opening the door fully, placing one hand on the steering wheel or windscreen frame, then performing a controlled fall into the seat while swinging both legs over the sill simultaneously. Getting out reverses the process, often requiring a push-up motion to clear the sill. This automotive yoga becomes more challenging with age or reduced flexibility. Many older enthusiasts who loved their Elises eventually sold them simply because entry and exit became too difficult. Lotus recognized this issue and sold optional sill covers that provided a bit more cushioning, but they didn't really solve the fundamental problem. Some aftermarket companies offered lower seats or modified sills, but these compromised either headroom or chassis rigidity. What's particularly amusing is watching new passengers attempt entry for the first time. Without proper instruction, they invariably try to step into the car like a normal vehicle, resulting in an awkward straddle of the sill. Experienced owners develop a pre-flight briefing for passengers, demonstrating the proper technique and warning about the sill's heat after spirited driving. The Elise entry dance becomes a badge of honor among owners, separating true enthusiasts from those who just want a pretty sports car. It's said that you don't just drive an Elise, you wear it, and putting it on requires flexibility and commitment. Targa, top like a tent. The Elise's soft top is less of a convertible roof and more of a camping accessory that happens to fit on your car. Made from fabric stretched over a minimal aluminum frame, it provides basic weather protection but requires the patience of a scout leader to install properly. The roof comes in two pieces, a front section that covers the cockpit and a rear section that spans the buttresses behind the seats. In theory, removal and installation should take just a few minutes. In practice, especially for new owners, it can turn into a 20-minute wrestling match in a parking lot as rain begins to fall. The fabric panels need to be stretched tight and secured with multiple fasteners, and getting them aligned properly requires practice. Storage is another adventure. The roof panels don't fold into a neat compartment like modern convertibles. Instead, they roll up like camping gear and must be stuffed somewhere in the car. The official storage location is behind the seats, but this requires removing the panels in a specific order and rolling them just right. Many owners simply leave their roofs at home on sunny days, accepting the risk of unexpected weather. The soft top's design also means it's not exactly weatherproof. At highway speeds, wind noise is tremendous and water can find its way through the seals during heavy rain. The side windows are thin plastic that scratches easily and can pop out of their tracks. Winter driving with the soft top is an exercise in dedication, as the minimal insulation means the heater struggles to keep up. But for many owners, these quirks are part of the Elise experience. The removable roof turns every drive into an open-air event, and the hassle of installation just makes you appreciate sunny days even more. Race-style instruments. Late in the Elise's life, Lotus made a change that delighted enthusiasts and confused traditional buyers in equal measure. They replaced the conventional analog gauges with a stack digital display system straight out of a race car. This wasn't just a modern update, it was a complete reimagining of how driver information should be presented. The stack system features a large digital tachometer with programmable shift lights that illuminate in sequence as you approach redline. The display can be configured to show different information based on driving mode, prioritizing lap times and temperatures on track while displaying fuel economy and range during street driving. The shift lights are particularly addictive, turning every acceleration run into a video game style experience as you chase the perfect shift point. What makes this system special is its configurability. Unlike fixed analog gauges, drivers can customize what information appears and when. Track day enthusiasts can monitor oil temperature and pressure in real time, while commuters might prefer a large speedometer and fuel gauge. The system even includes data logging capabilities, recording performance parameters that can be downloaded and analyzed later. The switch to digital instruments wasn't without controversy. Some purists argued that analog gauges were more in keeping with the Elise's back-to-basics philosophy. They missed the mechanical sweep of a needle and felt the digital display was too modern for such a raw car. But most owners quickly became converts, especially after experiencing the shift lights during spirited driving. The stack system turned the Elise's dashboard into a focused performance tool, providing exactly the information needed without distraction. It's another example of how Lotus evolved the Elise over its long production run, adding technology only when it enhanced the driving experience. Sub 800 kilogram starting point. When the first Elise rolled off the production line in 1996, it achieved something remarkable. A fully road-legal sports car that weighed less than 800 kilograms. In American terms, that's under 1,760 pounds, lighter than a first-generation Mazda Miata despite being mid-engined with a more sophisticated chassis. This featherweight status wasn't achieved through any single innovation, but rather through thousands of small decisions. The bonded aluminum chassis saved weight over steel, the fiberglass body panels were lighter than metal, manual windows saved the weight of electric motors, the heater was minimal, the sound deadening non-existent, and even the paint was applied sparingly. Engineers weighed every bolt, bracket, and clip, choosing the lightest option that would still do the job. The sub-800 kilogram weight transformed modest power into thrilling performance. With just 118 horsepower from the Rover engine, the early Elise could sprint to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds. More importantly, the low weight meant everything else worked better. The brakes had less mass to slow, the tires less weight to grip, and the suspension less bulk to control. The driving experience was immediate and telepathic in a way that heavier sports cars couldn't match. Unfortunately, this extreme lightweight philosophy couldn't survive regulatory reality. As safety requirements tightened and customers demanded more features, weight crept up. Airbags, side impact protection, and emissions equipment all added pounds. By the time production ended, even the lightest Elise variants were approaching 900 kilograms. But those early sub-800 kilo cars remain the purest expression of Colin Chapman's add lightness philosophy, and they're increasingly sought after by collectors who value driving purity over creature comforts. Longest running Lotus line. From 1996 to 2021, the Elise enjoyed the longest continuous production run of any Lotus model. 25 years is an eternity in the sports car world, especially for a small manufacturer like Lotus. The Elise outlived multiple parent companies, economic recessions, and changing safety regulations to become the backbone of Lotus's survival. During its quarter-century run, the Elise spawned countless variants. Beyond the standard models, there were supercharged versions, track-focused editions, and special commemorative models. Each variant pushed the envelope in different directions while maintaining the core philosophy of lightweight simplicity. The Cup models stripped out even more weight for track use. The SC versions added superchargers for more power. The RGB Special Edition painted cars in the company's historic racing colors. The platform's longevity also allowed Lotus to amortize development costs over a huge production run by their standards. More than 35,000 Elises found homes worldwide, making it by far Lotus's most successful model. This volume allowed the company to maintain profitability during lean years and invest in future products. The Elise platform also underpinned the Exige, Europa, and 2-11 models, further spreading development costs. When Lotus announced the end of Elise production in 2021, it marked the end of an era. The final edition models, available in multiple configurations celebrating different aspects of the car's history, sold out immediately. The last Elise off the production line was a yellow Sport 240 final edition, which Lotus retained for their heritage collection. After 25 years, the car that saved Lotus was finally retired, making way for a new generation of electric sports cars. But for enthusiasts, the Elise remains the definitive modern Lotus, proving that in an age of increasing weight and complexity, simple and light could still captivate drivers. Hand-built at Hethel. Every single Elise was hand-assembled at Lotus's headquarters in Hethel, Norfolk, England. This wasn't mass production in the modern sense, but rather a blend of high-tech chassis, construction, and old-school craftsmanship that gave each car its unique character. The process started with pre-bonded chassis units arriving from suppliers. These aluminum tubs would then move through the Hethel facility on dollies, not automated production lines. Skilled technicians would hand-fit the suspension components, carefully torquing each bolt to specification. The engine and transmission assembly was lowered in by hand, with workers making dozens of connections for cooling, electrical, and control systems. The body panel fitting was particularly labor-intensive. Those massive clamshells had to be aligned perfectly, with panel gaps measured by hand and adjusted using shims and careful manipulation. Paint was applied in small spray booths, with workers manually masking and preparing each car. The soft top installation required careful stretching and fitting to ensure a proper weather sealing. Even the minimal interior was hand-trimmed, with workers cutting and fitting carpets, installing seats, and running wiring harnesses. This hand-built approach meant production numbers were always limited. On a good day, Hethel might complete 10 to 15 Elises, a far cry from the hundreds per day at mainstream manufacturers. But this also meant quality control was personal. Workers knew their cars would be driven by enthusiasts who would notice every detail. Many owners report finding handwritten notes from assembly workers tucked into various corners of their cars. The hand-built nature also allowed for special requests and custom configurations that mass production couldn't accommodate. Walking through the Hethel factory during Elise production was like visiting a racing team's workshop rather than a modern car plant, with skilled craftspeople taking pride in every vehicle they touched. Bonding complicates crash fixes. The same bonded aluminum construction that makes the Elise so light and rigid creates nightmares for body shops after accidents. Traditional crash repair involves cutting out damaged sections, welding in new pieces, and refinishing the repaired areas. But you can't weld a bonded aluminum chassis without destroying its structural integrity. When an Elise suffers structural damage, the only proper repair often involves replacing entire chassis sections, or in severe cases, the complete chassis tub. The bonding process requires specialized equipment and training that most body shops don't have. The adhesive must be applied precisely, cured at specific temperatures, and tested to ensure proper strength. Even minor impacts that would be simple fixes on conventional cars can write off an Elise if they damage the bonded joints. This repair complexity has created a network of Lotus specialists who understand the unique challenges. These shops invest in the proper jigs, heating equipment, and training to repair bonded aluminum correctly, but their services don't come cheap. Insurance companies often total Elises after relatively minor accidents simply because proper repairs cost more than the car's value. This has led to a thriving market for salvage Elises bought by enthusiasts willing to perform their own repairs or use them as parts cars. The situation is even more complicated for the fiberglass clamshells. While these can theoretically be repaired, color matching across such large panels is extremely difficult. Many owners opt to replace entire clamshells rather than attempt repairs, adding thousands to repair bills. The combination of exotic chassis construction and limited parts availability means that owning an Elise requires either very careful driving or very good insurance. It's another example of how the pursuit of lightweight performance created unexpected ownership challenges that conventional sports cars simply don't face. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so you don't miss the next one. See you there.